Two women have come forward. Can't question their motivations. They're clearly very credible people. These are very serious accusations, and he's unfit to serve office.
That's Virginia Delegate Patrick Hope on the sexual assault allegations against Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. Hope plans to launch impeachment proceedings if Fairfax doesn't resign by Monday. Fairfax is denying both accusers' allegations and is calling for an investigation to clear his name. He also says it is obvious that a vicious and coordinated smear campaign is being orchestrated against me. I will not resign. Joining me now is Republican strategist Justin Sayfie and Democratic strategist David Morey. David, I want to start with you. The pressure here for Fairfax is mounting for him to step down from local officials as well as legislative bodies to House and Senate Democrats. Do you think he truly believes he can survive this?
Well, I think, Philip, it's good to be with you, by the way. I think this is unlikely that all three, the lieutenant governor, the governor, and the attorney general, will survive over the next 100 days. The pressure is mounting on the lieutenant governor. The issue, I think, is the balance between zero tolerance and due process. In some ways, we may need to find a new balance between those two. The Me Too movement rightly is calling for zero tolerance, but that sometimes questions where due process comes in. Al Franken was pushed out. Many people think that was unfair the way that went down. Both Justice Kavanaugh and Professor Blasey felt they were treated unfairly. There have been accusations of sexual harassment against the President of the United States. How do you adjudicate these things fairly? That's, I think, what Justin Fairfax is going to argue. He's lawyered up. The other side's lawyered up. This is going to take some time. I suspect these people are going to have to resign because they can't do their jobs at some point. They've mishandled, by the way, the crisis dynamics of this with tremendous malfeasance in some ways.
Justin, let's talk about that Kavanaugh connection. What do you make of Fairfax calls for an investigation into these allegations? Do you think he's factoring in how things played out with Brett Kavanaugh?
I think he is, and I think it's a fair request. I mean, look, he's been accused. He says he didn't do the things he's accused of doing, and so there should be an investigation. There was an investigation with the allegations against Justice Kavanaugh, and there should be an investigation here. And I also think it's interesting to look at the larger context that this is being played out in. You have someone who wants to file articles of impeachment against the lieutenant governor, but no one's doing that with the governor, Northam, who has a photograph in his yearbook with the picture of a Ku Klux Klan member in his yearbook. How come no one's filing impeachment articles against the governor who had that odious photograph in his yearbook? The Democratic Party is making a big mistake if they don't come out against Governor Northam. It seems the same way they're doing against Lieutenant Governor Fairfax.
It's a legitimate question. David, Fairfax is questioning the timing here of these allegations. He called it a smear campaign. And all of this, of course, is coming out while Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, he's under pressure, his own pressure to resign. What do you make of that defense?
Well, I think that, it looks like there's a pattern when two people make the accusation, but Justin's right. You've got to have a fair investigation. Back to that new balance we're going to have to find between zero tolerance and due process. The presumption of innocence enshrined in the Constitution. Look, Governor Northam and, in some ways, the Attorney General, they fail in terms of crisis strategy. What can be known will be known. And how they or their campaign or their communication staff could not have known about these photographs and gotten ahead of the issue, maybe used it as an educational opportunity, because context is everything. We say when we study and deal with crisis, you're going to tell the truth eventually. But if the truth is dragged out of the governor and the attorney general, then they're not using it as a learning opportunity. And I think Justin makes a good point. I mean, I think all three are eventually going to be out because they can't do their job.
So, Justin, do you think it is a rush to judgment then, these impeachment proceedings talk?
Look, if they want to have an impeachment, if they want to use impeachment as a basis to have an investigation, to find the facts, to question witnesses and to get to the truth, then that could be a good thing. But at the same time, I really do think that it looks like the governor and the attorney general are trying to stick it out, and they're trying to let this thing blow over. And I think it's the wrong move for them. I think they're putting their political selfishness above their party and their state. It just gives the state of Virginia tremendous black eye, even more so, even after you had those protests, those protesters carrying torches, screaming blood and soil in Charlottesville in 2017, and now you have the governor and the lieutenant governor of the state facing these types of accusations. I think it's just a black eye for the state, and they should do the right thing. And Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, as leaders of the Democratic Party, they should do what they can to put pressure on Northam and Herring to both resign.
It is a question of that, but it also all ties back to due process. I mean, whether both of these parties have different standards, what do you think the standard should be there?
I think the standard should be whatever the parties want it to be. I think if the Democratic Party wants to be the party that has moral authority to speak about social justice issues, racial justice issues, gender justice issues, they cannot tolerate this. They cannot allow the governor of the state of Virginia to have a photograph of himself with a Ku Klux Klan in his yearbook, and you can't allow the Attorney General, the chief law enforcement officer of the state of Virginia, who has admitted to wearing blackface. I don't think that's a standard the Democratic Party wants to be known for, especially as you're gearing up for the 2020 presidential elections.
David, will this new accusation here against Fairfax lessen the pressure against Governor Ralph Northam to resign? He and the third in line for the governorship, AG Mark Herring, they both admitted to blackface. And then the next in line to the governorship would be the Republican Speaker of the House of Delegates.
Yeah, I think Kirk Cox is going to be taking an office soon, who's fourth in line, thanks to the drawing and a lottery system because the election was so close. Now, I think the Democrats don't have much choice here, too. In some ways, these leaders, aside from the moral problem, in the context, as Justin said, of Charlottesville, they're not going to be able to do their jobs. The challenge is Virginia doesn't have a very easy system of impeachment. I think investigations have to come down. I think that there should be zero tolerance by the Democratic Party, but we're going to have to balance that with due process because there has to be a presumption of innocence. That's part of our Constitution. So we're going to have to find the new ground here and deal with this. But right now, Virginia is reeling, and the brand is really in trouble. No Virginia governor has not served their term since the Civil War. I suspect that's going to change over the next 100 days.
Justin, do you think at all this new accusation against Fairfax is detracting from the pressure that the governor is feeling, as well as Mark Herring?
Absolutely it is. I think, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but this new allegation against Lieutenant Governor Fairfax is probably seen as good news by the Governor Northam and his staff because it does detract, and now the focus seems to be on the Lieutenant Governor. So just in terms of the media attention that it's getting and the focus, and now this article of impeachment that may be filed on Monday in the legislature, those all are, unfortunately, sadly, and tragically good news for the governor. And it may allow him to kind of stay out of the spotlight a little bit and the pressure reduce on him, which I think is unfortunate.
David, what do you think happens next?
I think eventually there's going to be resignations. 2 of the 3 will be gone soon. They won't be able to govern. I think Justin makes a good point. Things get relative here, so this does relieve some of the pressure on Governor Northam. And the Attorney General looks even to have less pressure than the other 2. There are different cases, but they need to be dealt with in terms of what's right for Virginia. And these people aren't going to be able to govern very long, so they're going to have to step down. And that's pressure that is put on them to do it.
Who would have thought? That's what would have come of this 1 week later. My goodness. All right, Justin, Sayfie, thank you so much for joining us. David Morey, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Philip.
Thank you.
As Esquire magazine calls it, the hunt for Donald Trump's tax returns has begun. But what kind of fight will the president pose to keep